I think the story for many people starts in the 1980s, which is a period of considerable social change in England. But that has been mirrored in other European countries as well. The social change I'm talking about was the end really of the industrial era that people had become very familiar with for perhaps the century or century and a half before that. So suddenly there was land that was no longer required for industry. There were people who had spent their lives in working in factories that no longer were required to do those sorts of jobs. And one of the legacies of that structural change, which certainly in England took place from about 1979 through till perhaps 1985, was to start to think about, well, we have this land that is no longer required for economic purposes. What do we now do with it? The urban forestry idea perhaps has its roots primarily in North America. Some people would claim that idea goes back maybe as long ago as 100 years. But in terms of the European and the UK situation, I think what started to happen was the realization that urban forestry as a form of greening could actually be a reuse of some of the land that was no longer required for the industrial process. In the UK, I think for a variety of reasons, they were attracted by the idea of participation by local communities in a partnership between central government, local government and local people in a greening initiative which would be based on urban forestry but would have a specific focus on delivering services for communities. And that's where the name community forest probably found its favour. And so the programme developed during the late 1980s, and I think a key date was probably 1988, when the then Forestry Commission and an organisation called the Countryside Commission, both of which have changed now out of all recognition, produced a paper called Forests for the Community. And this envisaged a network of urban fringe and urban forests around major settlements in England. And really that was what gave birth to the project that then became Community Forests, which really got going around about 1989, 1990. I think the role is very much in helping to shape the strategy. I am a firm believer that citizens, right down to the individual level, should have an ability to affect the planning decisions of a major project. I have to say that when I first got involved with this, there was quite a lot of opposition. But I think the opposition to that has gone down now. And the opposition was very much came from professions who said, well, you know, we've been trained for 3 years or 5 years or 10 years, however long, to be a professional planner or a professional landscape planner. And we think we know best. But actually, I see the role of those professional planners is to bring about the vision that local people want to have. And the best way of doing that is through the development of the overarching strategy for an urban forestry project. Let me give you an example. Local people may be of the view that actually real priority for them is having somewhere, for example, for recreation or children's education. And so the involvement then of the professionals is to develop a strategy which will ultimately bring in the resources and put in place the plans which can then bring that about. So some people call it bottom-up meeting top-down. And my own preference, but I guess there will be other views, is that it should be nearer the bottom than the top where the process meets. Because I think that the public wish, given the fact that it's usually the money from the individual citizens paying taxes that should have a major driver for projects of this kind. The key role for local governments, when the Community Forest Programme in England was first established, I think it would be fair to say that the majority interest was from departments of central government. Over time, partly because I think the organisations were themselves changing and wanted to move their priorities around, there was a belief that the local authorities should take on more responsibility. Some were prepared to do that, others less so. And partly I think that was to do with the local priorities. In some areas, afforestation was a real priority, and in other areas less so. So I think governance arrangements have changed. But I would say that it's probably the case that local authorities are the most significant contributor to the decision-making processes at the strategic level.
Right. What about the economical system?
Oh, big question. The green economy, perhaps. There certainly is a role, and has been a role, for urban forestry generally within land restoration and reclamation. There is a belief that businesses of the future wish to locate into areas of high environmental quality. And there are all the reasons why the community forests in England, urban forestry more widely across both Europe and indeed the world, is often seen as part of the wider economic agenda for a green society. In terms of direct economic benefits, one could almost go back to the Age of Enlightenment and talk about the fact that if people have the opportunity to be healthier, people have the opportunity to have a better welfare and well-being, that there will be a better workforce, more motivated, have less time off sick, less aggressive in the workplace. So for all of those reasons, I think that you may call it the soft reasons, but actually to a business they're really hard reasons. You know, that your workforce is motivated and healthy and fit, and you know, they have a good quality environment which impresses their customer base. These are all things that I think urban forests can really assist with. And it's the public sector, that is government and local government, has to show leadership. But I don't think it's an unreasonable thing to ask businesses, if we're going to put some money in, you've got to come with us. You've got to also put something in. It may be money, it may be land, it might be workforce time. I don't think it's reasonable to expect the public sector, local government, national government, to put in all the money which is going to lead the economic, or release the economic potential. It has to be a public-private partnership.